Hello. Starting now? No? Live. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm sorry. Thanks for joining us, everyone. If you're tuning in tonight, please let us know in the chat. I'm here with Ruth McIver, author of the fabulous I Shot the Devil, that's just out, and you can purchase that from our event partner QBD Books, and you can find a link to that in the chat. And I'm told that there are just 4 signed copies left, so you better get in quick to get some, because there'll be collectors items in decades to come, I'm sure. So yeah, any questions can be entered into the chat, and also if you're joining us from Facebook, then please put your comments in and Facebook Live, and they'll be picked up by our friendly Hachette people. And we're just getting everyone coming in from all over Australia.
It's great.
Canberra, Melbourne. And will we be seeing some, do you think, Ruth, from your from Dublin?
Oh, hope so, but I'm not sure. I hope so. I hope
anyway,
some of them have snuck in. But there's oh, hi, Leanne. How are you?
That's great. Oh, wow. Lots of people coming in. Hello to everyone. We're just waiting for some more to pop in. So I wanted to start with a welcome to country, because I know you've got one in your book, and I am speaking to everyone here from Gadigal country of the Eora Nation, and I want to, along with Ruth, who is speaking from, where are you, which area are you in?
Watering country, yeah.
Great.
So, yeah.
And just we both pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. And I also am just around the corner here in Redfern in Sydney, so just around the corner from the Story Factory, which Ruth, I know, has been a big part of your journey as an author. And I wonder if you could just kick off by just telling us a bit about that.
So my relationship with the Story Factory, my agent.
Yes, yeah.
So that was kind of a serendipitous sort of thing that happened in 2020, just as the world was closing. And so I ended up getting in touch with Shane Salerno, and after about 3 botched attempts to get a mailed copy of my book to him, we managed to finally get it, and and he read it and loved it, and so he became my agent shortly after that, and basically, you know, I really wanted to work with someone who had connections also to film, and who was sort of like basically had that kind of vision and scope, and also obviously, like, you know, ties to America, and I see my book reaching a US audience also. So there are a lot of sort of exciting things in the works that I can't necessarily disclose at this stage.
How exciting.
Yeah, but I definitely, as I was writing the book, always saw it in a very kind of filmic way, or saw it as adapted as a TV series. So yeah.
Yes, I'm going to ask you about that. I'll ask you about that a bit later, actually.
Yeah.
So just for because the book is only just out, isn't it? I Shot the Devil, and my thumbed copy, which didn't get much thumbing because I read it so quickly. But if you could just give like the elevator pitch, what is the book about?
Yeah, I'm still refining this because I have done a lot of elevator pitches in the past. They just get links here and links here. But this book, like, in short, I would say it's, you know, and I don't know, sometimes I hesitate using the word literary crime thriller, because I think that has a certain kind of connotation, but that's the way it's, I guess, like, been described and marketed. But it is a literary crime thriller that's set in 1994 and 2010 respectively. It's got lots of noir notes. I'm a real lover of noir, and it's a fairly kind of hard-boiled book about a journalist who is a crime writer, or crime feature writer, and she's tasked with writing about a satanic murder that happened 16 years ago in the West Cyprus woods, back in her hometown. And while she's tasked with investigating this murder, she has to go back into her past and into this murder, which she is actually not necessarily intimately involved with, but knows all the players. And it is a tragedy that has really affected her life. So as she digs into the past, she realizes that she's more connected to the story than she even initially knew. And also this sort of threat to her life escalates and intensifies as she comes closer and closer to uncovering what really happened back then. And I kind of like to see it as Me Too crime fiction, because it talks a lot about survival and resilience and trauma, overcoming that, and structural injustices, and what the experience of being a woman is like, especially a teenage girl, and what happens when things go wrong during adolescence.
Yes, I think to say it was literary is spot on, because it's so beautifully written. And I have to say, Erin is a very layered, complex character that is, even though I didn't have an angsty teenagerdom myself, I knew angsty teenagers, and I felt that you really go into her background and how she's looking back into her teenage years. How much of what Erin was about did you draw on from your own experiences? Because the 90s obviously was before your time as a teenager.
No. It's okay. I'm going to take that as a compliment. Well, look, to be honest, so in 1994, I was actually 14. So, I was still quite a young teenager, and I wasn't getting into any mischief at all at that age. Oh, well, a little bit actually, but just low key naughty, and pretty much on my own naughty. But yeah, some of those things, like going in and buying cigarettes in the diners, and I did that. Some of those those hijinks and naughty stuff, for sure. But it was drawn upon also by my brother's 4 years older than me. And so he was a proper teenager in the 90s, growing up in that era. And, I was very kind of privy and witness to what he and his friends were getting up to, and sort of being a nerdy, angsty teen, but preteen, was sort of sitting on the outskirts, kind of looking in on that. So there's a little bit of that. But sure, I think, I think that sense of angst and despair was there for me. There are elements of her in me, but also I feel like on a level, she's a character that could have actually had a semi-normal life and life experience on some levels, because she was actually kind of the nerdy one of the group.
Yes.
When you kind of look into it, it's sort of the tragedies that occurred, and the father that she had, and that sort of thing, all of those things, and then just getting tangled up with these people. She could have had a very different experience. So yeah, so in a way, she is like me and unlike me, and my experience was like hers, but also not at all. So yeah.
So it's also interesting that you chose as the protagonist, or the person who makes everything happen, is the writer, investigative reporter, as opposed to a policeman, because a lot of crime novels tend to have, and a lot of the crime shows we're watching now, it's always the cops, and there'll be crooked cops and all that. And I know there are cops involved in this, so I don't want to give spoilers, but they're obviously very much a part of it.
Yeah.
But Erin who's the reporter, is investigating. And I think that's becoming more and more a case
Definitely.
where it's like almost citizen justice. So
Yeah.
that I wonder, like things like Teacher's Pet, the podcast, and we as listeners could feel that we were doing something towards getting justice for that poor woman's disappearance or murder, without actually doing anything, but by listening to the podcast and throwing sunlight onto something like that. Is that something that you see happening?
Absolutely. And I think, in my PhD, I kind of looked at that a lot, the ability for true crime podcasts and series to actually even like reverse miscarriages of justice.
Absolutely.
And the rise of the citizen sleuth on top of the and the journalist as the sleuth is like a really growing kind of trope. But I think for me also, like, because my first manuscript, which isn't published, was a procedural crime novel, and there were so many mechanics of policing, like I think that the first part is like I was informed by all of those ideas and that trend, and really engaging with true crime culture and like, forums and citizen journalism. But then there was the latter part, which was like I'd just written a procedural crime, which I researched a lot, and I felt a lot more like I was still not super confident about it, because I was like, oh, I'm a layman or layperson. And then but say with the States, like I felt really comfortable using an American voice or going back into the past, but I didn't really feel confident with their procedure and like writing from a cop's perspective, say. So like while they are there and I researched it, they're not the main kind of characters. And part of that just had to do with, me not immersing myself in that culture and feeling that I could kind of execute that as well.
Okay. Yes,
I know some writers do, and they do it really well from other countries who haven't even been there. But I just personally didn't feel, and also I didn't think I had it in me, to be honest, to do another procedural.
So that was Nothing Gold, was it? Is that Nothing Gold?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
but it's didn't get published.
It has it won didn't won sorry it was shortlisted
right.
prize, but it hasn't been published. But it was a book that I spent a long time kind of researching and writing and rewriting and rewriting and rewriting. So so I think I think I just kind of like had that sense of I don't know if you've ever heard this kind of anecdote of like women on Seek, for example, will not apply for a job if they don't have like 1 out of like 20 criteria. And then like a male candidate will apply if they have 1 out of 20. But it was like, for me, I had that sense of like, oh, I don't have the qualifications for this. Like, what did I think I needed to do? Like become a police officer and like work in law enforcement in order to write that book. But it was I just had that sense of not being an expert. So, and it never felt like I'd done enough, if you know what I mean? Like, but I feel like also that, just given that there's so many people that have written, and I've read so many procedurals where I know that people haven't done firsthand research into it. I'm like, it's not as big a deal as I thought. And, I probably didn't need to kind of, torture myself so much with that one.
So I'm fascinated by the fact you did a PhD in what was the title of your PhD? Because I no one mentions that, and it's always fascinates me. I've got quite a few friends who've done them, and they have these bizarre niche titles, and I was just really interested.
Mine's a great title, but now that you ask me, I'm like, am I going to get it right? It's something like our dark places, or my dark places, the shadows between the shadows and I actually can't remember it, but
that's all right.
And the ethics of true crime inspired.
Okay.
So that's what I'm really interested in, is true crime inspired crime fiction. I'm interested in ethics in that, and also in ethics in crime fiction too, and how that intersects with, particularly with women, and the representation of female victims.
Yes, because this was nothing exploitative about this. She was, and some crime fiction can be, obviously,
Well, it was important for me not to do that, but at the same time, I don't want to sound righteous about it. I just feel like, and I think I've been a little bit, someone gave me some feedback recently that I'm doing a little bit of like almost like a fade out when it comes to really violent scenes. There was more violence probably in the first draft, but I feel like when it's spectacularly bad people, I don't feel so bad. But when it's like real people and real victims, and as I said, like, I write true crime inspired fiction, but that's like, these are fictional characters fully.
Yes.
But
yes.
because there's sort of like a grain of truth in it, I feel like there's a responsibility for me not to do that. But also just because I think there were all those kind of body novels of the 80s and 90s where it was really, really, really kind of just a delight in the decimation of real sexual violence. So while and I feel like it's my job to depict like violence against women, and because that's a real structural ongoing threat, and it's remiss to not do that. And I don't want to criticize anyone who's doing that, but I just try to do it in a way where I'm not, and it's just such it's kind of a really, it's a subtle thing, and it's something that requires a lot of practice. So
okay, so you studied a lot of true crime. Was it while doing the PhD that you came across the crimes which inspired I Shot the Devil? Because you could tell, I mean, you mentioned the Memphis 3, I think you've mentioned as one, because that was a miscarriage.
That was definitely, absolutely. And that was the kind of, and obviously, like, I researched the Satanic Panic and crimes that happened during the Satanic Panic. There's references also to other murders on Long Island. I was really interested in the Long Island serial killer case, which is still unsolved. It's a cold case. And it's a really harrowing case. There's actually a documentary on Netflix about it called Lost Girls. And there's a really brilliant book about it called The Lost Girls, and by Robert Kolker, and that was, I think, 2013. So I kind of did a collage of true crime events, but the main story was the Ricky Casso case, which was a case in the 80s, and so that was so, obviously, like, I had little elements of that which I sort of interjected into it. And obviously reframed, changed all the, like, nothing about the crimes that occur in the book are anything like those crimes, except for the fact that they were all, and this is what intrigued me about it, was they were all on so many hallucinogens. The like court reports are just wild, and the fact that one of the defendants actually got off because they were like, this like boy or this person who's just on that precipice of 17, 18, he was so, into, like, they were like, I don't know, smoking like 12 bags of PCP. Like, they, were seeing people shapeshift, and nobody knew what was happening. And so it was just this impossible way to get testimony. And I just found that so intriguing. And, obviously it must have been really distressing for the family. But it was such a wild and sensational case. So.
Yeah, I had a quick read on Wikipedia, and it was like, wow, the drugs and the
unbelievable sort of
how they were still standing.
Oh, I know, and that's what I find really amazing. But like from youths that I kind of like you're saying, youths, like teenagers when I was younger, and I knew that they were using a lot of drugs. But like, say, like Ricky Castle was taking up to like 40 hits of acid a day, which is somewhat inconceivable. But like, what we're like, and there's actually a documentary coming up about the case and him, I think, which I think will, maybe look more into the mental illness side of things, which would be really interesting because, he was in and out of psychiatric hospital, and not to kind of try to exonerate him on
No.
any level, but just to understand, because I think, you know, the label of evil is a little reductive, and also, like, you know, obviously there's so much more going on, and they were so young. They were all so young. So
So do you think, is it just because we're all in lockdown and everyone's watching all these crime documentaries that we're thinking everyone else is doing it? I don't know. But do you think there's something like, say, the beginning of the last lockdown, for example, everyone was watching the cats one. Don't fuck with cats.
Oh, don't fuck with cats. That was brilliant.
It was amazing. And that was about that genre of people who just went on the dark. I don't know if they're on the dark web, but they were, you know, having personas and digging into stuff, and they did solve this crime.
I know, it was an incredible, it's you know, community of web sleuths doing that and offering their expertise. And you know, you read lots of varied things about this, because a lot of cops and law enforcement get cranky about people, say, sort of being armchair detectives, but also there are these great, you know, this, you know, again, it's this kind of balancing act and this light and darkness, like of the online world. Like when someone's missing now, for example, you can like get that information out and share it so widely. But then there's also these other risks. And then what I, you know, explore a lot in the book is people not being who they say they are online, and this sense of avatars and like digital dread, you know, like which is something that really interests me a lot, you know, these kind of fraudulent identities.
Yeah. So do you think that's something that now, so in the 90s we had satanic panic, you know, now we've got a pandemic, and that has also, is that part of what's pushed us to crime, or were we on that trajectory anyway, watching like more and more? And even the sorry, my dog's drinking water very loudly, even the all the Scandi noir crime, like big Wallander and the bridge one, the bridge. Yeah. So do you think there's something happening out, you know, that this is a trend of the moment, or has it always been happening and we're just kind of recognizing it?
Well, I think there are two things going on. So one is that I think true crime started getting a real true crime started becoming popular in this different way. So it became more literary in the 90s. And I think, you know, there are these books like, you know, Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, like perfect example. But like in Australia, we have like Joe Cinque's Constellation, which I think is
yes.
Yeah, and really, and
Helen Garner.
Helen Garner, and then Chloe Hooper's book,
the Dark Man,
The Tall Man.
Tall Man.
Yeah, and and so then, you know, you've got these kind of books that win really big prizes, and then the medium changes too. So you're getting well, first of all, documentaries, and then like The Staircase and that sort of thing. Then 2014, Serial, which is the start of all the true crime podcasts, kind of, you know, really, in my opinion. And so there's this true crime renaissance, but I think true crime has always been popular. It's just the mediums have changed. And I do think crime fiction has always been popular, but there are just trends, you know, obviously. And so, you know, the Scandi noir was one, and then we have rural noir and, you know, that sort of thing. But now I guess the interesting thing is we're having a merge. So we're having true crime and crime fiction come together, and I'm seeing that a lot more. I find that really interesting.
Right. And I guess crime is so much more cinematic and documentary, and I can ask you the question now about your book as a TV or, you know, or film, because I saw you tweeted a clip that the Story Factory wrote of the girl running through the woods.
Yeah, that's just a little just a little trailer. Yeah,
but it was really good. It really gave the flavour, you know, of the scene.
I loved it. Yeah, I loved it.
It was great.
Yeah.
So I thought, it's very cinematic. So I have to ask you, if they made a movie or a series, who would play Erin?
someone else said that before, and I can't stop thinking about it because I feel like for some reason I said the first person I kept thinking about was Florence Pugh, just because I love her so much.
Oh, yeah.
But also, yeah, like I feel like I don't know how old she is though. I think she might be a little bit young. But yeah, I also like, and I don't know how to pronounce her name, Riley Keough, I think.
Yes.
Yes, I think she would be a really brilliant choice also. But I am very open to suggestions.
Yeah. Well, it's good. I remember when I read The Dry, and I knew then that Eric Bana had been cast.
So you were already picturing him.
I was picturing him the whole way through it. So it's kind of better to go have this vision of someone, you know.
Yeah, I think I used to get really disappointed if I saw a book that I'd read turned into a movie and they cast someone who didn't look like the character that I or they did. But now I think I'm more interested in casting choices. Like when I watch something, I'm like, oh, that's interesting that they because you see a lot of that changing now. Like as in, I think there's more leeway with interpretation of how characters look. And yeah, I don't feel as fixed to that too. I think I'd be really open. I'd love to sort of see that though, because I'm obsessed with, I feel like if I had a second career, it'd be being a casting director, because like, I just feel like everyone I know, I'm like, you remind me of and I'm obsessed with movies. Like I've been obsessed with movies since I was a little kid.
And always obsessed with horror movies? Because I saw that in your bio. Like
I love horror movies, but I'm obsessed with all movies really. I mean, growing up in the 80s and stuff, like my brother's really into horror and stuff. So yeah, I love horror movies for sure. But like, you know, all the kind of 80s and 90s movies, like all comedies and dramas and whatnot. So yeah, I'm just a general movie buff. But yeah, I do tend to have I don't know, I just like am a horror movie buff from way back.
Yeah, because there's someone here who said, like Tom Cruise as Jack Reacher didn't fit the physical profile at all. Yeah.
I think when it's a book where it has like a really crazy fan base, like, so luckily I think, you know, this might be a book where people don't have that same attachment, or it's like, it's not as well known I don't know. But like if it's something like Twilight, do you know what I mean? Like, and it came out and it was like, that could like cause people to riot and burn down a cinema. Because people get really crazy about stuff like that, you know? So yeah, but I think I'm not going to be one of them. So
no. So where did so you liked horror movies even as a kid from your brother, etc. But when did your actual interest in true crime come from? You said your dad reads
he does,
my magazine, That's Life, and so we have a lot of amazing crime stories.
I know, I love it. Yeah. So, I always read. I read Murder in My magazines when I was a teenager. I used to collect those. My brother and my dad both were really into it too. So I have to say, like, it was kind of a family hobby. My dad will text me and he's like, "Could you hear about this case?" You know, and what do you make of this? And it's I don't know. I mean, I wanted to be a criminologist when I was like, that was one of my career paths, as, you know, sort of like I said, a teenager and stuff. So I think I'm really interested in true crime, sure, like as like a, you know, but crime itself, like
And as we were saying before we came on, like if you're not reading all that crime stuff, before I became to That's Life, I didn't read that much overseas crime, and you'd watch something like Dexter and go, that's still made up. And then you go, no, the reality is worse. You know, people do extraordinary things. So just your process with coming, so you had the process of I Shot the Devil. Did you knew the real crime that you were going to loosely draw from? Satanic Panic and the Ice King, not Ice King, what was he? Anyway, and the Memphis 3.
The Acid King.
Acid King, sorry, not Ice. Acid King. So what was your process? Are you one of those writers who sort of map it out and you've got post-it notes and
No.
you know what's going to happen?
No. I do a synopsis because I got taught to do that back in creative writing class, and I just started doing it. So at least I kind of have a rough roadmap. And basically, like, I think what happens is I just kind of start writing, do a really, really crazy draft, then go back, do a less crazy drafts, and then things get more and more kind of worked out. But yeah, like, absolutely, I do start storyboarding like as in when I say that, I mean I get I have a whiteboard, and it's got like, it's almost like those mind maps that we got taught to make in school, just a little bit like that. So I get key stuff down. But my main thing is because I have this thing called dyscalculia, so it's like really similar to dyslexia. So it's with numbers, and like I that's my largest problem is like I remember texting my friend and saying to her, like, I spent 7 hours today trying to work out the age of my character. Like, so it's really, that stuff is really hard for me, and because I'm so interested in like intersecting timelines and all this stuff, it's like one of my hardest things. So that's actually kind of why I have that. I do that because I have like different time periods and everyone has to be the right age. And also I kind of have a little bit of a weird superstition with numbers. So like things have to add up in a certain way, and they have to have like synchronicity and stuff. So
there's quite a few numbers through the book. There's 888.
Yeah. I don't know if it's a little bit OCD-ish, but it's just what I do. But yeah, like, I think I'm definitely not I'm a pantser, and I think it's one of those things that things would certainly be a lot easier if I planned them a little bit more. That said, I'm not like fully without a roadmap. It's just not super detailed. I don't know. I mean, like, I think I envy that process, but I also think like there is some charm or magic in perhaps just like kind of letting things go, like just letting things happen and see what you know, where things unfold. And sometimes it can be rubbish, and it's silly, but then sometimes like something really unexpected happens. So yeah.
So did any of your characters surprise you? Like,
oh yeah.
So you went, oh, they did something.
Yeah, totally. And I think like, you know, obviously I had, because I was doing it as a PhD, so I had a creative writing supervisor who gave me some feedback, for example, with certain characters, you know, perhaps they might be more like this, or they might be like less like this or whatnot. But yeah, they definitely do have a life of their own. And in this weird way, I kind of feel like it's already pre-written in a way. It's like, it's always going to come out in a certain, it's just like, you're always going to get to the same end, but you just don't know how you're going to get there. So I kind of,
so you knew the end?
Well, yeah, I knew the end always. Yeah. But I
a good end.
I kind of didn't really know certain things about the end though. And surprises happened. And then I was like, oh, and I can't really say what those are because that'll spoil the book. Yes. But yeah, things did happen. And I think it's also like, now I'm, you know, writing another manuscript, and I'm sort of sitting there going, are you evil or are you good? I can't tell, you know, and I'm just like sort of waiting for you to show your true colors, because I could do this with you or I could do that with you. And yeah, so it's it's funny though, because like I think that there are some authors who can get away with having like lots of really, really unlikable characters. And I think there's a danger when you don't have many likable characters with any attributes. But at the same time, it was really important for me to show this really kind of decaying noir kind of world where, you know, everyone had been kind of spoiled. And when I say spoiled, I guess I mean like kind of ruined by an experience. Yeah, like
I really liked Mona.
Oh yeah, me too. Yeah.
And the ornaments.
Yeah,
because we sell a lot of that. We have ads for those things in the magazine, you know. The
infomercial. Yeah, and also I think it's really nice to have a character that's kind of diabolical, but with all these knickknacks. And Yeah.
No, there was some great, and I guess how you made some of them where you thought that you turned on its head what we thought about. No, that's not a spoiler. You know, where how you have a view of someone and then you challenge that view.
I think there's a lot of distrust, and I think there's that thing where I think there's a sense of the adults all kind of being corrupt. And so like even though Erin's an adult now, it's like she's had no role models around her or anybody around her that she can really fall back into. And that, that whole generation and all the adults of that town and that time were all kind of corrupt and created this atmosphere, but blamed the kids for the stuff that went wrong. And I think in a weird way, when I was thinking about that the other day, I was like, oh, wow, that's kind of like Nightmare on Elm Street in a little way, because that in that movie, if you haven't seen it, it's all the kids are being the high school kids are being kind of punished for the sins of the father or the sins of the peer their parents, which is like a really gothic kind of trope. The sins of the father will come back to haunt the child, and then they must kind of carry that burden.
So with Erin, she goes through quite an emotional journey. A huge emotional journey, and if I'm not, say there was trauma in her past, and then she does articulate some of it. Do you think that has, because we get a lot in the magazine, in That's Life, people who had terrible trauma in their childhood or whatever and never spoke about it, and then once they speak about it, it becomes, articulating it is a big start to healing from that.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And there's something about the written word or writing that and story that helps resolve trauma. And I think in this sense, I don't know that her trauma's resolved by the end, but
no.
I think I tried to take a more realistic view of that, because I think you would be kind of it would be very rare to find someone who said, I'm 100% okay, and I think what happens is that maybe finding out truth and making some kind of peace with that is the most that we can hope for. Like, and I think self-knowledge and wisdom and stuff is kind of the road to that, but also just like the writing of the story and the telling of the story. So which
she was doing
by
proxy, because she was covering that story. So you also are a journalist, like you write other stuff, articles for a living.
Well, I did do that before my PhD, and I kind of went on the scholarship then, and I stopped doing any paid work except for, and so I just lived on the stipend, which, as you can imagine, is not very much. But I was doing some extra work, which is also not very much, but it was really fun because it was like doing something so cerebral and harrowing and stuff, and then getting dressed up and going on a movie set or a TV set was really like, it was just such a nice kind of light relief. But before that, I've been doing more, like I have reviewed and I've written for, The Age and The Big Issue and stuff like that, largely personal pieces and stuff. But mostly I was like kind of doing medical writing and that sort of thing, a lot of corporate writing. I did do heaps of kind of like freelance stuff in journalistic stuff in my like late 20s. And I think when I started writing Nothing in Gold, which had a different title, of course, because there's 17 bajillion drafts, I think I just got really tired from all the endless submitting and hustling and all of that stuff. And a novel just takes over, your life, really. So I sort of stopped doing that. And then my portfolio kind of became irrelevant. So, But yeah, I think, I always wanted to do, I would have loved to say be a crime feature writer or something like that. But I don't, I don't think I have the kind of like diligence for that, and also like I don't know if I had the stomach.
Yeah, for what you might find. There's a
Yeah.
question here from Kerry Connors, which was, I was just about to ask that question, so thanks, Kerry, for prompting me, is how long did it actually take you? Because you won the Rochelle Prize, and might I say we have the lovely trophy right behind you. Is that right, for the Rochelle
I
Prize?
know.
Yes,
That's
yes.
right. Proud of place. Yeah.
So that was quite a coup. But that was in 2018, was it, that you won that?
That was the end of 2018. Yeah.
Right.
So,
and that was for this book.
yes. So, but this book, so I got the book deal really shortly after that, but the manuscript was complete when I had when I submitted it. Obviously,
and how long did it take you? How long did it take you to write?
Well, to write in the first place, yeah. So I started the book sort of like, I would say maybe like September 2015, and I would have finished it like 2017. So like it was like a year and a half to write.
Of writing every day?
No. So that was the thing, because I was doing the PhD, so I had I had to work on the critical stuff too, and yeah. So like I would say like a year to a year and a half to actually write the book itself. So yeah, and there was breaks with that also, because you have to do your candidacy, and that is like a hellish ordeal that takes 6 months out of your life that you'll never get back again. But yeah. Yeah, so yeah, like I think a year and a half. So and then obviously like you have to go through the edits and stuff with your supervisor, and then so I had 3 major structural edits, and I think it hadn't been through a proofread though. That was the only thing. But you know, obviously when you work in a publishing context, it's very different. And so obviously there were 2 editors, because there's the Australian editor and UK editor, and then there's all the stuff that you do. So that, you know, you just kind of, it's always like I always seem to be editing the book, but it wasn't like they were huge edits either. It wasn't like that. It wasn't awful. It wasn't what I'd heard so many people that said that they had to get total rewrites and stuff. So it wasn't like that. It was more just like there's a lot involved that you're not kind of aware of until you publish. So yeah, so there was that, but also, you know, the book was due to come out in 2020. So when I got offered the book deal, that was 2019 February. So that wasn't that far away really when you think about it, but then the book got pushed forward. So now that seems like a long time, you know, but really that's not that long to have a 2-year, you know, considering everything. So
someone's asking, did you find you deleted sections along the way, or did you add sections as you reread?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that's a good question. So that's I added a little bit. I didn't really delete. I added and padded a little bit. I did actually have to kill one character who was kind of not kill. Sorry, I had to change a little bit. I have to say, like, I was surprised by the you know, I didn't have to totally lose storylines and things like that. I'd already had before I got to kind of like submitting Nothing Gold to an agent, I'd worked with a proofread, a structural editor, and then upon the agent's advice, I got whole storylines, like half the book cut. I rewrote. So I was used to having something really kind of just like and so really, really, really kind of a little bit ruthless, really. So I was actually quite surprised with that. It was mainly more kind of like additions and small tweaks and clarifications and things like that. I think it was like 70,000 words, maybe it's like then it became 10, but I'm not 100% sure. So yeah, but not hugely substantial.
Yeah, which is pretty good for a first book. And someone else is asking other writers that have inspired you, which is another really good question.
Yeah, it is. So look, I mean, it's hard. It's also a hard question because I mean, I've been such a kind of like passionate reader since I was a kid, and so there was like all these influences over the years, and I feel like a lot of the books that you love when you're like, and authors you love when you're a teenager, for example, you kind of hold on to them and you read a million books and be influenced by those, but you always think of those ones. So I have a lot of those, but you know, I think I was really interested. I only kind of came into the idea of writing crime kind of like when I was like 24, 25, and then I didn't start really doing it because I didn't feel confident until kind of like my late 20s, early 30s. So so I remember reading P.D. James, like An Unsuitable Job for a Woman, and that was like one of the most amazing books. And I love Patricia Highsmith. And all those kind of like those detective kind of novels, and I was like, wow. And also like very dark noir and psychological thrillers. And then, you know, obviously I started reading like procedural crime. Like I love all of Gabrielle Lord's books that were, I thought they were brilliant. And I was like, I'm actually really enjoying reading these so much. And, you know, then started kind of reading like Dennis Lehane and Gillian Flynn, and I love all the Scottish tartan noir writers like Denise Miner or Mina. I never know how to pronounce that. And I love Karen Slaughter. I love Louise Welsh. I love Megan Abbott.
Oh wow, well, there's a lot. So, what was the first book that, as a child, that made you fall in love with reading? Because you obviously did a lot of reading as a child.
Well, I have it here. Yeah.
Here's one I made earlier.
But besides from like, you know, all the obvious stuff like being a child and then a YA reader, you know, those ones. Besides from that, was this. It's my
Edgar Allan Poe,
Great American Poets book, which is I've had this. I remember going to buy this was a preteen, and it has a sticker from Tower Records there in the Roosevelt Fields Mall. So it's like a legit artifact. But yeah, I started reading his short stories and poetry, and I was like, oh, I love it. And I was like 13. I was like, this is what I want to be. I want to be a writer like Edgar Allan Poe, you know, which is doesn't have.
That's great. So all 13-year-old girls should have ambitions like that.
Yeah.
So was that in America that you bought that? Were you growing up in America then? Yes, because I was going to say you had a UK editor and Australian editor, but it's the American stuff. And I mean, I've been to America obviously, but I've never lived there, but it felt incredibly authentic. And so,
well, that's good because I did. And I hadn't been back when I wrote the book, and I was really worried about that. Because
But you lived there in the 90s?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Right.
So it was actually written from experience, and it was almost like a kind of like a re-remembering of that time. So I'd hoped that would come across. I felt a little bit less confident, but some of the, and just back to that earlier question, some of the additions came after I went back to America while I was still in the editorial process, and I added a few little scenes because I went back and revisited the town, but I hadn't been back there.
The town where you lived?
Yeah. So I hadn't been back there since.
Was that in New York?
It's in Long Island.
In Long Island, sorry, yes.
Yeah.
Of course, yeah.
So that was 1994. That was the last time I was there. Yeah.
Okay, so we've got another question. Do you get the ideas for the people in the book from other movies or real life people? You get them from crime. So a lot of, are there other crimes that have made you, you know, that you think, oh my God, I'd love to write something about that.
Yeah.
Or that's a crime.
I've got a list of that. Yeah, for sure. But like, I think with characters though, I don't really, so true crimes inspire me and the events inspire me and elements of the people inspire me, but the characters are altogether different. So, and I think they're inspired by like what all writers will sort of say. Part of them is people you know, people you encounter, bits of yourself, and then there's just this magic bit, I guess, where it's just fully like, you know, it just comes out of the ether.
Because Erin was named, you have a friend called Erin.
Yeah.
Was that just the name? Yeah. She's not a journalist, or?
No, she's not, but she's got an Irish background, and I pictured her looking a little bit like her. It was just sort of like, I don't know, it was just a kind of like loving instinct, I suppose, if that's the best way, because I do actually love Erin as a character, but it was more just a little bit of that informing that, but yeah, I think then there's also that magic realm where characters just come from, that so they're part of all of those kind of sectors, like.
Yeah, so another one was, do you read any other genres?
Oh yeah, I do. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, what sort of?
I like reading. I really enjoy reading nonfiction, to be honest. Just because I feel like I get a lot in my head with writing, and I start deconstructing and dissecting story, and it's really boring. It's like I just want my head to shut up, and I'm just like, oh my God, get off the job and just suspend disbelief, for God's sake. So it's like reading crime, like, which I bloody love, is so hard sometimes. So I tend to read a lot of memoir, and that's something that I really enjoy doing, like reading nonfiction essays. I also, with other genres, I suppose, I don't know, like, again, this literary fiction divide, I don't really like using it, because I feel like literary just means better, and I think crime is just as good, and can be high quality, but what would be marketed as literary fiction. Yes, but mostly these days I'm a nonfiction reader.
So what are you reading now?
Right at the moment, I'm reading, weirdly enough, I'm reading Down the Rabbit Hole, my time at the Playboy Mansion.
But it's something completely different.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm really interested in the dark side of Hollywood. Like, it's kind of fascinating to me, and you know, it's actually pretty well written, and it's quite interesting. So, yeah, but I have to say, I do listen to a lot of.
This is all Playboy, so.
The
Playboy Mansion.
Yeah, the Playboy Mansion. Yeah, but just it's actually kind of a little bit harrowing on a level too, because they did. It's quite an abusive situation there. It's almost like a cult. So yeah, it's really interesting though.
I have a lawyer friend who went there, and obviously years and years ago, I think in the 80s or the early 90s, and he said everything was like, it was grimy. Everything was just really grimy.
Well, this is what's so interesting in the book. It's like she's saying, like, there's this image and this like kind of like gorgeous facade, but everything was, they're put in these rooms with like shabby furniture.
Yeah, and the pile carpet was disgusting.
Yeah, and like dogs are just shitting everywhere. It just sounds, it's such a good metaphor too, like, you know, for what it's like. But I mean, it seems to me kind of almost like a slavery situation. So it's like, but yeah, it's really interesting to read. So that's what I'm reading. And I'm also reading a friend's book that she put out on magic, which is really interesting. So
like magic. Not a fiction, or like a non-fiction book?
No, it's magic? A non-fiction book, and it's really beautiful. It's like a memoir, but it's like a guide to magic and the art of magic. Yeah, so it's really, really lovely. Yeah.
So you reading and a lot, and you're watching a lot of movies and a lot of TV, but you're also working on your next book.
Well, I would say I'm not reading a lot. I'm reading a little bit, and my reading's been very bad during the pandemic. Mostly, I'm reading. I'm listening to audiobooks. I'm finding it very, very hard.
And this is an audiobook, isn't it? Now.
Yes, it is. Yes. It's on Audible. Yeah. Yes, and actually I downloaded it onto my phone, but I haven't been able to listen to it yet because I just feel a little bit weirded out. But for some reason, I'm really excited, but it's weird. So I'm not reading heaps. I am watching a lot of things more because it's like, the truth is my attention span's not real at the moment, which I think a lot of people are suffering from. Yeah. But I'm also I'm out here kind of living on my own. So, and there's no kind of, you know, there's no kind of nightlife to speak of. So it's sort of like I'm pretty much, it's like, yeah, I am probably watching a lot of things.
But you're writing
and
your next
listening.
book. Are you writing your next?
I am.
What have we got to look forward to from Ruth Ritchie?
I can't.
Ruth McIver. Why I say Ritchie?
That's okay.
Richard.
Someone's listening to the book on Audible. I just saw that. That's exciting.
Oh, good. There you go.
Yeah, I had someone listen to it first, and they really, really enjoyed it. I think the best compliment you can get is people who don't like reading books enjoy your book. That's like the best thing for me. And they're like, hey, I think I might like reading. Do you think you could give me some tips of other books I might enjoy? I am writing another book. I'm actually sort of writing two things at the moment, but and I have written a book in between.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, and that's coming out. That's
no,
okay.
Not yet.
Okay,
yeah.
All right. We'll just watch this space then.
It's all TBA. Yeah.
Yeah. And look, we're nearly finished, but I just wanted to ask you, what was the best moment when you get your of actually publishing your first book? Was it opening, like you see authors on Twitter or whatever, and they're opening their box and their books are there and they just go, oh, like, was it choosing the cover?
Well, I mean, that all of that stuff is pretty magical, isn't it? I mean, like, I think it's like seeing the cover for the first time, seeing it.
It's a beautiful cover, yeah.
It's a gorgeous cover. It's a really gorgeous cover. All of those things. For me, also the Audible thing was so exciting because I got to choose. I got some input into I got all input into the choice. So, and the narrator is Lorelei King, who's a narrator I really, really like. So that was like super exciting. I think, and I don't want to because I feel like I don't want to complain because, everything happened in lockdown. Yeah. That was really difficult. I haven't really had the really exciting experience of being in the shop and doing the whole thing.
Well, hopefully you'll get to do some author tours and some book festivals. I mean, that's part of the joy of being an author, is going to book festivals and a reader.
That's kind of like those little things, being in the bookstore, interacting with booksellers. Also, like, it's been so really nice to do events with other authors too, because it's like you're meeting other authors. That's such a huge part of your community, and like it's part of the reward of it. And so but at the same time, you have to kind of like put it in perspective. And also, like, we've now worked out and navigated all these new platforms because we've been in this pandemic for so long. Yeah. And there are also lots of people who are coming to things that couldn't come to things. Yeah. Like, in the past, I used to have and I'm like about 90% to 95% better now, but I did have really severe chronic fatigue and ME. And there was a time when, I just would not be able to get to things, and I feel so isolated and sad about it because I just really wanted to. And throughout this whole pandemic, I've been thinking there's a lot of benefit for people who can't access these things, and so it's a little bit more accessible on that level. So
that's a perfect note to end on, silver linings, because events like this probably wouldn't have begun happening without the pandemic and us being in lockdown. So I want to thank you. We're getting some nice comments about people who've enjoyed it. I just want to thank you, Ruth. It's been such a pleasure. I really, really loved the book, read it so quick. It was one of those books where the next day you were like, I wanted to pick it up again, so which I always think is a really good sign. So it was beautifully done. So you can once again purchase Ruth's book from our event partner QBD Books, and as I said, if they haven't been snapped up now, there are 4 signed copies which will become collectors issues, and there's another great event coming up that the fabulous people at Hachette are doing, and I want to thank them for making this possible as well, and that will be on Wednesday, October 27, and that's Joanna Nell, who's written a very different book, I'm sure, because it's called The Tea Ladies of St. Jude's Hospital. So that's kind of right at the other end of the spectrum. visit booksandbubbles.com.au for more information about free events like this. There'll be more coming up. Sign up for the newsletter. You'll get to hear first what's happening. And you can also go to that site and you can look at past author interviews like this one. So I hope that I haven't forgotten anything. I've got some more, anyway, more questions which you're not going to be able to have time for. So thank you so much, Ruth, and best of luck with your next novel. And I'm looking forward to seeing Erin Sloan on screen.
Me too. Thanks, Linda.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.